Coming to you live from Radio Cayman Studio.
For the record.
For the record. For the record. Hear from your government officials, independents, and the opposition on issues that matter to you. For the record. Engage in an open dialogue between residents and lawmakers.
For the record.
For the record. Informative, impartial, insightful.
This is your talk show.
1-800-534-8255. Your calls, your input. This is For the Record. And now, your host, Orit Connor.
Good morning and welcome to For the Record. Today is Friday, the 29th day of June, 2018. I trust that everyone had a wonderful weekend, a wonderful night. The weekend is coming now, so I trust that you will have a wonderful weekend as well. And that everything went smoothly for everyone. No rain, at least not in my area, and it didn't seem as if there was any rain in Georgetown last night as well. I want to give a big shout out, keep my promise to people in Tropical Gardens. Big shout out to all the residents in Tropical Gardens. Big shout out to all of those neighborhood watch groups who are diligently trying to ensure the safety of their communities. And big shout out to the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service and their community policing program as well, who are doing an excellent job in terms of heightening awareness, passing on relevant information to those neighborhood watch groups as well. I want to thank you, our listening and viewing audience, for allowing Radio Cayman and, by extension, For the Record into your homes, into your vehicles as you traverse the busy roads of the Cayman Islands, into your places of work, whether it be an office cubicle or if you're working in the outdoors. As you know, For the Record is a show produced by the staff and management of Radio Cayman, and it is geared towards keeping you abreast of issues as they arise and play out on the local, regional, and international scene. I am your host, Orit Connor, and you're welcome to join me every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 7:30 a.m. until 9:30 a.m. Our phone lines are always open. There is always someone there waiting to take your calls. Normally, that beautiful radio voice of Miss Susan Watson. You can call us on our toll-free number provided courtesy of Flo. That toll-free number is 1-800-534-8255. You can also call us on 949-8037 and 949-6990. If you don't like to talk on the telephone, you can email us at For the Record. That is one word, For the Record, at candw.ky. Remember also, you can follow us on YouTube. That is Radio Cayman live stream, and our WhatsApp number, where you can leave us a text message or a voice note. That number is 925-3261. And for those of you who like efficiency and who may not simply have enough time to hold on when we have you on hold on the phone, you can certainly utilize that WhatsApp number, 925-3261. Take your own good time to leave the message that you want to leave, and then we play it back, and it's just like you were on the phone calling in at the same time. I have given a commitment to name and shame on this radio station when it comes to bad driving, speeding, and other antisocial activities. One of my listeners, yep, it can be. One of my listeners shared with me the fact that on exiting Foster's Food Fair at the airport, they were driving behind a vehicle. I believe it's a silver Honda Civic. And when they made the turn heading west towards the Mango Tree area, seems as if the person on the passenger side just simply started to throw garbage out of the window of that vehicle and continued. The driver being unable to drive and recorded at the same time was fortunate enough when the vehicle stopped to take a photograph of that vehicle and to record, which also has the license plate. That license plate number 181760, silver Honda Civic. And you're now posted on the wall of shame in relation to littering in the Cayman Islands. I also advised the individual that they should report it to the police because whereas they didn't have the visual evidence of the contents being thrown outside of the vehicle, they certainly saw it and were witness to it. They did that, and we believe that the police will be in contact with the owner of this vehicle. Now, it is quite possible that the owner of this vehicle may not have been the driver of the vehicle, but if they weren't the driver, then obviously they should know who was driving the vehicle, because the person who took the photograph also knew the time when it occurred as well. So silver Honda Civic, license plate number 181760. You're on the wall of shame for littering in the Cayman Islands. And we realize that there are people who don't necessarily share the sentiments that many Caymanians share, part of our heritage to keep a clean neighborhood. And you see it in the old pictures with people ensuring that their yards are clean, swept, raked, whatever. I remember early in the mornings before going to school, I would have to pull bush. I was out there raking the yard and pulling the bush. On weekends, I had to pull bush as well. And we realized that there are many people who haven't grown up with that sort of upbringing. And when I say that, I mean that for Caymanians and non-Caymanians as well. So again, silver Honda Civic, license plate number 181760, wall of shame for littering. You can do better. You must do better, because unfortunately the police can't be everywhere, but we have our civil police out there, and when you see someone doing wrong, take a photograph of it. Take a photograph of it and report it to the relevant authorities as well. Okay, that's enough of my speech this morning. Today being Friday, it's the day that has been assigned for the opposition to be on For the Record, and it is my pleasure again to welcome this morning the Honorable D. Ezard Miller, Leader of the Opposition. Good morning, Mr. Miller. Welcome to For the Record. I know you have a busy day today, and it's been busy all week, so we look forward to hearing from you some of the things that have occurred in the Legislative Assembly, especially for those who have been unable to follow it on Radio Cayman 105.3 FM live, or the recordings later on in the evening as well. Mr. Miller.
Yeah, Wesley, good morning to you and good morning to the listening public. And as usual, I'm glad to be here to converse with the people of the country. It has been a busy and eventful filled 2 days of the Legislative Assembly. We had the tragedy that happened on Monday in terms of the role of the Legislative Assembly and the authority that it should exercise in the country. And then yesterday was private members' motions, and strange things really happened. We had the government do a 180 on the first motion about withdrawing funds from your pension plan, and actually approved an increase from the 35 to 50,000 based on a motion brought by the Georgetown Central Representative, Mr. Kenneth Bryan, and they accepted the motion brought by Mr. McLean on the matter of these 25-year work permits. There was some amendment made to the resolve section by which Mr. McLean agreed to make once the government raised the point. And so hopefully we're going to get that, because we believe from the opposition point of view, that that matter was being abused and that CEOs were getting it that were never intended, because at the time this was brought, incidentally, I voted against it when it was brought, and all the things that I pointed out were possibilities were actually happening, was intended to attract business, particularly in the reinsurance market. But most of the applications came from people who've been here for long periods, some for 9 years, and some for very short periods, who were not in that category. So the government has agreed to look at the legislation, and probably is going to lead to some restriction in the businesses which can apply for that. Because when you give somebody at the top of any company a 25-year work permit, that's no longer a glass ceiling. Exactly. That's a 1-inch rebar reinforced 6-inch 55 psi concrete ceiling.
Impenetrable, yes.
Right, because that's 2 generations of Caymanians that can't get that job.
Precisely.
And today we've been dealing with the rest of the government business, which was 12 bills, and I think we've done 3 so far. We've been working until 10 o'clock at night. And the unfortunate thing about when we compress this, the Premier sees it as a very efficient use of time, and to some extent that may be true. But what happens is we have to bring the bills back at the next sitting or soon thereafter for amendments, because when things go through so quickly, I mean, the government itself, right, although they've had all this time between when we met in March, right, and now meeting in late June to get legislation prepared, they're still bringing amendments for legislation that they presented and gazetted, right? And which, in my view, again, if we took more time to do these things, I think we'd get a greater opportunity to get it done properly.
Yeah, those unintended consequences. I believe we have one earlier caller. Let's go to the phone lines. Caller, good morning. That caller has left us. Okay. In relation to the 50,000 withdrawal from the pension, I'm not sure if I heard this right during the debate, but was there also some undertaking to look at whether or not the $100,000 was a viable amount at a later date?
The debate centered around, first of all, that the government objection to the motion was that pension was not entitled to fill these gaps for mortgages and stuff. And they thought that 100,000 was too much, and there would be very few people who had accumulated 100,000. So then, through various whispering and negotiations, there was an agreement that if they reduced it to 50 instead of 100, then the government could accept it. I didn't support the motion. So, because I never believed that pensions should be used for that. The problem with mortgages is much larger than that. And taking out your cash and your pension for those temporary short-term fix. The problem in the society is because the government is not doing anything about addressing. I mean, we had one member of government get up and say that the mortgage crisis is over. Right? I'm glad to hear that it is over in his constituency, because it's certainly not over in mine. But because the government is not doing anything to address this mortgage crisis, the people are being forced to turn to want to request money from their pensions, right? And that's going to be a heavy penalty to pay down the road, right? So that's why I didn't support it. I want the government to get busy with providing proper mortgage legislation, and also to change the investment criteria of the pension plans to allow a greater percentage to be invested locally in cash deposits at the bank, which will produce long-term money for the bank. It is kind of unreasonable to expect a bank who is lending money that is deposited for them for 3 months or even a year to some Cayman to build a house on a 30-year mortgage. That presents a great risk. But if you have pension money, which is long-term money, then you will get, the bank should be able to, one, have a reduced rate on the mortgage, and also lend it for longer periods of time.
Okay, we're going to go to commercial break, but when we return, I'd like you to mention whether or not we have been able to determine with these pension funds how much are actually the losses due to investment, as opposed to how much money is spent on the administration of the pension funds as well. That's very important to know, because I haven't heard one person speak positively about any pension fund here in the Cayman Islands in terms of it increasing, but yet we see internationally pension funds are doing well. Folks, please stay tuned. For the Record, we'll be back shortly.
For the Record, with your host, Auret Connor.
Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. In the studio with me this morning, Honorable Diaz Miller, Leader of the Opposition. We have one caller, so we're going straight to the phone line. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Morning, Mr. O'Connor.
Morning.
Morning.
Just three things I just want to bring. Mr. Miller, I know you say you don't support the pension, but my...
No, I support pensions. I don't support withdrawal of your pension to service a mortgage.
Yes, my bad, the withdrawal.
Yeah.
My support for that would be, one, if an individual have $50,000 left to pay off their mortgage, because I feel if one is able to get rid of that overhead or that stress of having to pay the mortgage, and they only have a balance of $50,000 or $75,000 left to pay it off, then why not? Because now they don't have to be stressed about finding the funds in their latter years, especially to pay off that mortgage. That's one. The thing that concerned me with regards to the mortgage crisis on the island, and we can't fix everyone's problem, and the government, we can't assume that the government is going to be there to bail any and everybody out. But one of the things that when we look at, I think, our recent situation with regards to the gentleman that the family that was put out of their home. Our community, if we think of it, when there is one individual, and I'll pick on, and I'm being sensitive about this at the same time, we have the Cancer Society. They'll get out there and they'll raise hundreds of thousands of dollars for a situation, or if it's a child or an adult. And we all know how many billions of dollars has gone into finding the cure for cancer. And again, I have people in my family that was diagnosed with cancer. My point is, if we can come together and raise millions of dollars for such a cause that we keep putting money into, we have a family or two families that is being displaced or being taken, put up on the street, where there's only $150,000 maybe, or $200,000 to at least keep that family in their home. We don't come together. And a lot of the situation that we have here can probably be remedied if, as a community, we will come together and try to remedy the cost rather than just pointing our finger at government. At the same time, I do accept that government has a role to play. If we're going to spend, I heard, $1.1 million on South Song as a boardwalk, then why can't we find some funds to take care of some of these families? That's my take.
No, but I that's my point. I think there are many other ways that we can address this problem rather than disturbing people's pension funds. I would not be opposed to the government placing $10 or $15 million in Cayman Development Bank, for which people could go and borrow to pay off arrears on the house, and the bank took an equity charge on the house, etc. But taking $50,000 out of your pension plan and pay off your mortgage with no, even though there's been a requirement to pay it back at 1%, you have an idea how long you got to live to put that back. And then when you get 60, or the new age of retirement is 65, when you get 65 and you wind up getting $300-400 a month, then, but so there's no question in my mind that we need to address the mortgage crisis. But there are many things we can do other than disturb people's pension plan. And I think that is what I'm calling on the government to do. Let's sit down and collectively we have three basic problems in Cayman. We have the problem because the pension law as it currently exists with the multitude of pension plans in the private sector is not helping people. People are not going to get sufficient from that even after working 25, 30, 40 years in it to get, because it's a defined contribution plan and the payment at which you are contributing to the plan is not related to what you get back, nor is that related to your salary that you're earning. So we have that. We have the runaway situation with the health insurance, where we know that in 2016, according to their own figures tabled by Cayman and Monterey Authority, they made $51.5 million profit in this country. We have the problem of housing for people that needs to be addressed. But these things are all intertwined, right? And we should be able to put together a social security program that addresses all of those, and it is run not for profit. The problem we have now is that the pension plans and the health insurance is run for profit by the private sector, right? But we have to sit down and understand that there are some things that government has to do, and it has to be the collective will of the society, and we all have to help each other. And the only way to do that is to have a proper social security system that has in it the kind of short-term unemployment benefits, which when people get in these situations for short time, which is why a lot of people are getting problems with their mortgages, right? You can draw from that fund for that short-term unemployment, so that you don't get in these situations. But it has to be a holistic view.
Yep. I want to thank that caller for for those observations and questions that he had as well.
Sure.
And this whole thing about home ownership, in the U.S., for instance, is a big thing in terms of having that house with a white picket fence.
Yeah.
And we have to accept that not every individual family situation is geared towards home ownership.
Exactly. But again, we impose all of these planning regulations, right? I mean, the planning board is now telling you that you got to buy one of these $700-800 windows to put in your house, right, for hurricane impact, right? When a regulation actually says it has to be so it can be made impact free, but from things, which means you can put a sheet of plywood over it, right? But we're making the cost of building a house for a Caymanian astronomical through these unnecessary regulations, right? And you can't build a Cayman house here the way I built my house, or you built yours. Remember, we used to, in the days you had to get your house up to the belting, so you had equity in the house before you could get a mortgage on it, right?
Yep.
You remember? And cement. That's how we built the houses.
Yeah, you get it up to the belting, and then you go to the bank.
That's right. So you had sweat equity in it, right? But also you didn't have to do it all within 1 year.
Yeah, and in many instances you already own the land as
Absolutely.
well. You already own the land.
But here we are, people are being forced to take out these expensive mortgages for both house and land in a completed state. Because nobody, if you go to planning tomorrow and says, I want to build a Cayman-style house, right? And I can build this thing slowly. Boy, let me tell you something. That's not going to be a tough haul,
Because when you get your rate card, how long to complete it?
Well, I think now it's up to 3 years, right? But before you can, once you've started it, right? But again, we're over-regulating our society and punishing Caymanians.
Okay, we have a time check coming up for 8 o'clock news. Folks, please stay tuned. For the record, we'll be back immediately after the 8 o'clock news. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. In the studio with me this morning, Leader of the Opposition, the Honorable D. Ezard Miller, is in the studio with me. We have a few comments about the use of pensions to assist in mortgage payments, especially in foreclosure situations. This listener says, what about using it only for paying off an existing mortgage rather than getting a new mortgage? At least in that case, the house would be owned outright. And another listener says, good morning. I think each person is responsible for ensuring they can pay their mortgage. We know the bank is not going to foreclose for not making one payment. They go on to say that Caymanians need to stop this mentality that certain jobs are beneath them, but look at it as a honest living. Speak about controlling the size of households. This way, they won't have to go to the NAU for assistance as well. So what that individual is really saying is people need to look at their individual circumstances and make responsible decisions as well. So the first one was that use it for paying off an existing mortgage rather than getting, than.
And it can't be used to get a new mortgage. Okay. It can only be used, and it's only supposed to be used to write off a mortgage. But the problem we have is there's nothing in legislation you can't go back and get another mortgage, Mm-hmm. But before you pay back your pension plan.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? And my argument is that there's a smorgasbord of concerns why people get in problem. The banks are not blameless in this, right? In terms of overexposing people, right? By lending them more than they really should, right? Mm-hmm. Because the changes that the government made some years ago to the land registry law makes it easier for them to take your house away, right? And they don't have to sell it now for market value. They can determine fair market value by keep lowering the price because nobody has bought it until they get to fair market value. Mm-hmm. And then you lose your equity.
Yep.
Okay,
we have one caller. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, OC. How are you?
I'm fine, sir. Morning. How are you?
Good morning to Mr. Edward Miller,
morning.
opposition leader of the Assembly. I just want to put my 2 cents here, contribution towards the issue here of the pension. Now, I know I'm going to differ from Mr. Miller. And Mr. Miller, I hope you still talk to me after I say this.
Have you and I disagreed before we still talk?
No, sir.
We have disagreed on many things. Are we still friends?
We still friends. We're going to be like that till I die.
That's true.
Because I don't hold animosity. Anyway,
no.
I say the most fundamental aspect of a person's life is a roof over his head. Right? Mm-hmm. The old Cayman tradition, as they went to sea, they tried to get a roof over their head. Mm-hmm. Now, I will agree that we should let these people take their pension money to secure their home. The reason this pension was started because government saw where the older folks were leaning on them for assistance when they got older, and there were no recourse to turn to. Now, should we let these people lose their homes and then turn to government for shelter and food and pay their bills? I said the best thing to do is let them keep their homes, and they can always fend for themselves and find a meal somewhere and find a few dollars to pay the bills, the utility bills. That's my opinion of it. That's my opinion. I think we should try to save the homes so they don't be a burden on our government for both shelter and food. Because I understand now, government is even putting them up in hotel rooms. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Some people are staying at a hotel. That's not cheap.
Yeah, no. I don't. I agree with you that the government needs to do something to assist people in keeping their homes. I just don't think that the only way they can do that is tampering with the pension plan. I think there are many other things that they can do to help people save the loans in these short-term situations.
Well, number one, Mr. Miller, is to make sure they have a job, because we have an unemployment crisis here, and we have a mortgage crisis. And like you said earlier, if you wish government could get up today and say, listen, we have taken care of the mortgage crisis, because apparently they went and changed the law some years back to make the banks take away these people's homes.
Make it easier.
On a whim. Mm-hmm. That's a problem.
Yeah, I mean, what we need is we need proper mortgage legislation, and we need long-term money for mortgages. The whole thing is intertwined. The three things that we should be securing, particularly for Cayman and elderly, is housing, income in the form of a pension, and health care. Those three things are inexplicably linked together. When I took health insurance and pensions to government in 1992, because people around here are trying to rewrite history and forgetting that happened, right? And I had already started on low-cost housing by getting the first debenture issued to fund low-cost housing. The three things were all intertwined. We should have people retiring now with their health insurance benefit that they have when they work in, because you're being in a pool with young people who are healthy, right? And everybody's contributing a little bit to everybody. This madness the government is doing now is doing nothing about the mortgage, and they're going out now, hiring a Canadian firm to help them design a special pension plan for people over 60. No, you just think of the madness in that, right?
That is.
We've gone to a society that has nationalized health insurance, right, and health coverage.
Yeah.
To look for advice, right, to fix a private sector-driven health insurance plan for people over 60.
And you can bet that Canadian firm is going to recommend a Canadian firm to do it.
Well, it looks like a Canadian hired a Canadian firm, right?
Well, I was hoping that he would recommend what they use in Canada, which is the national health plan.
But that's not. No, he can't recommend that because that's not what they hired him to do. Right? I can tell you that just a basic knowledge of how health insurance is supposed to work. If we design a plan specifically, and you hear all this foolishness about we shouldn't be paid to cover pregnancies because people over 60 can't get pregnant, right? I mean, that's very Trumpinian, right? Remember, he's on the Obamacare, and men shouldn't be paid to cover breast cancer, and women shouldn't be paid to cover testicular cancer. It's all cancer, right? If you take out that section of the population all on its own, the premium is going to be over $2,000 a month. And we giving people $550 now, $650 this month. Next year it'll be $750. How are you going to get $2,000 in premium out of $750?
Yeah. Caller, I want to thank you for that.
Jesus can do that. He only did it with bread and fish.
Yep.
You know, did it with
have
money.
a good weekend.
Thank you very much. We're going to take another commercial break, folks. Please stay tuned for the record. We'll be back shortly. Morning and welcome back to For the Record. In the studio with me, none other than Honorable D.S. Miller, leader of the opposition. Mr. Miller, I was trying to think back. First of all, one of the callers commented about the fact that we do have people who are receiving government's assistance who are living in hotels. I believe one of the reasons for that is that many private sector renters do not want to rent to government because they complain about the late payment. I think they have issues in terms of the conditions of their their rental units and stuff like that. So there are many reasons why people have to stay in hotels. Sometimes you can't just simply go and find an apartment when there's a family in crisis, and you need to do it immediately because you have to engage. Plus, I believe that many of those persons have to actually go out there and find the accommodations themselves, as well. But I was trying to remember. I left home in 1967. I'm still trying to remember the first apartment building and whether or not there was an apartment building in the Cayman Islands at that point in time, because you either built your own home or you lived with family, but there weren't that many rental units. You may find a house, a complete house for rental or something like that, but I can't recall.
You're right, because there was such a shortage of rental units when we started having the influx, government needing to bring in people to deal with the financial industry explosion, and so government built houses. You remember when government built houses, we had Little London up South Church Street, right? And that's where that is when they
built it for the English people coming into
the super elite were called expats, and mean you couldn't even ride across the gate, right? Much less go inside Little London, because there was no spaces. Government built units, right, and government used to rent to these people and provide housing for them and all that. It was me again who in 1990, when I had Towers Perrin here doing the consultation on the private sector social security program that I carried to the Legislative Assembly, that we had the big upheaval by Caymanian civil servants, because you remember at that time every expat who worked for government got 25% of his salary bonus every year, right? Plus we were renting from and everything else. And I got Towers Perrin to value what was the percentage of salary that Caymanians were earning as permanent and pensionable Caymanians. And they pegged it at 15%. We used that then, the political arm of government, myself, Mr. Benson, Mr. Norman, and Mr. Linford, to pressure the government to reduce the gratuity from the 25%
to 15.
down to 15, so it was equal, right? And then we gave the civil servants that big 40, 50% increase in payment, so we could take back the 6%. So when you hear people in the private sector talking about civil servants are not paying for the contributed pension, they don't know what they're talking about, because we started it in 1990, and we started then at 4%, remember?
Yes.
4 and 4.
4 and 4.
And then it was supposed to graduate up, right? To make it equal, as well as less people are coming down, because the governor used his reserve powers and reserved the 25% for judges and chief of police and attorney general and people like them. You remember?
Yeah. The irony with that...
I'm young enough to have been involved in a lot of these things for a long time.
Yeah,
you know?
the irony with that gratuitous situation is that many expats working for government got that 15% gratuity, which was
Every year.
in lieu of pensions. Many of them turned around, stayed here. They got that money.
Yeah.
Never invested it. Put it one side for later years, which it was intended for. Right. Continued to work for government. Eventually
Converted to
acquired
permanent.
Caymanian status.
Right. Joined as permanent pensioner
Right.
people.
And then when it came time for retirement,
They found
because this period of time within which they were Caymanian and their retirement made their pension so small that now the government has to supplement that. These is not for Caymanians, for people who came here on contracts and got their 15%. So not only did they get their 15%, but now the government is having to support them by supplementing what they're getting as a pension, because that is not enough for them to live on now as well. So again, the Caymanian got shafted in that situation. We have one phone call. Let's go to the phone lines. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Yes, you know it was me. Good morning. Good morning.
morning there.
A lot of keep kind of flying like I have nothing to do. Good morning.
Morning.
Morning, is it, honey?
I'm good.
Good. See, and Mr. Ezra, a few months ago, didn't Mr. Seymour came on the radio and say something in regards about the garbage man being lazy? Did he say that word, or I just heard that?
I don't recall. Well, I have. We have had a interesting quirk in that I've been trying to get a copy from government TV of that video, because we also believe that certain misinformation was delivered on that day by the chief officer on that For the Record.
Well,
Curiously, that For the Record sequence has disappeared from the government archives, and I can't get a copy of it, and it has been pulled down from YouTube. You tell me why.
And Mr. Miller, I don't know if someone can call and correct me later, but I swear I heard that gentleman said in regards about the garbage guys is, they're lazy and some is not coming to work and some is coming to work. And
yeah, but that's not. He might have said that, but that's not the root of the problem. Is that they have many positions over there which is unfilled. They are almost 50% short of the staff that they should have in order to man the garbage trucks, because we should be operating them garbage trucks 24/7 without paying overtime, because we should have people hired for positions.
Mr. Miller, I say there should be a garbage truck that is standing outside, once it's Bordentown and Savannah, and once at Georgetown and West Bay. But what I'm saying that for is because I noticed on a couple of occasions the garbage truck comes out and pick up garbage and leave some of the garbage in the bins. Now, my garbage is placed in bins. It's not scattered about and so forth. So I just want to say that, if you're going to come pick up the garbage, if you can't pick it up, leave it. Don't take half and leave the other half. I was talking to a lady a couple of days ago. She told me that she went to Honduras one time, and she said the garbage guys picking up garbage plus using a rake and a shovel for what dropped on the ground.
Yeah, we used to do that here too. When I can tell you that when Mr. Walling Whitaker managed the solid waste collection scheme, his drivers and attendants had rakes on the truck. If they spilled the garbage, they would pick it up. Look at all the roadkill on the road today that is out there infested with maggots and everything. Mm-hmm. He had a team, their job, they had a special truck. They drove through the island on a daily basis and picked up these carcasses that are capable of spreading disease from the road.
Mm-hmm. All right, Carla.
And Mr. OC, I called Sterling Show the other day in regards to you having longer time and more days, but we'll discuss that another time. I know.
Okay, well, you can continue. You can listen today because I will be guest hosting for Sterling Dwayne Banks. Unfortunately, he has a family issue, and I'll be guest hosting for him.
Okay, well, I'll be calling you later, God's willing. I just want to say that yesterday was the last day of school. For the school closed yesterday.
Uh-huh.
And it was a bittersweet on the compound yesterday. As the buses was pulling out, there was tons of teachers and students, security guards, and the workers from the restaurant and so forth was all out there lined off, waving, and the buses just blowing and blowing and blowing. You know, for the years that I've been there, if it happened, I can't recall it. But yesterday was bittersweet to see what was taking place on the John Gray High School compound yesterday when the buses were pulling out, mm-hmm. and all these kids out there waving on the ground. I guess they stayed back for some activity they probably had, whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But to see it yesterday, it was bittersweet.
Okay.
So I would say some things are improving at the John Gray High School.
Yeah, and would the fact that some of those children will now be moving on to higher education, and maybe some teachers will not be extend their contracts or whatever, would that have anything to do with it being bittersweet as well?
I'm not sure, because I was surprised when I saw it, and the bee was blowing as he was going on. I saw all these people, all these children line off, and the teachers and principals and security guards and the cooks from the kitchen and waitresses from the kitchen and so forth. So I'm not really sure. I know some kids are going on to other schools. Some going to UCCI and so forth, starting of September, because then their time is up there and they will graduate now next year. But I want to also state that 2 weeks ago I had one of my students going on study leave. Mr. O.C. and Mr. Miller, that young lady ride on my bus for 5 years, practically every day and every evening. She didn't have things to do at the school after school hours. Pick up time, come in on a late bus, whatever. Never had one day of any trouble of that young lady on the bus. She gave excellent behavior on the bus. 5 years. These kids that we got here today, all they need is a little drive from home, and they can do world of wonders when they get out into the world. I take my hat off to Bianca. She was a beautiful student on the bus for 5 years. No changing seats for her, no telling her put her phone away, nothing in that category. It was always a good morning, a good evening. I know, see her first year in the bus, her mother came to the bus with her and brought me a Christmas card. I could not believe it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But guys, have a good one. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You do the same as well. We're going to take our next commercial break in another 6 minutes, so we have some time. I know you want to talk about the motion, Mr. Miller, so we can commence that conversation.
Bringing that up is a good segue into it, because it's the same ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And see, it is unfortunate the turn of events on Wednesday, but is what it is. But I believe that the potential fallout from the Parliament not entertaining and letting the motion go to debate and then voting on it is represents a dismal future for the country, because we now have basically carte blanche for any civil servant to come to the public accounts and erroneously inform us. Just to use the deputy governor's language, I won't say not tell the truth, but just erroneously inform us, as long as they put these ridiculous caveats. because everybody has hung their defense on this individual and the fact that she put 7 caveats into 2 sentence answer. Now, who does that if they know they're not lying? Mm-hmm. But the root problem of all of this is what would have happened, because let's and the motive behind stopping all of this, mm-hmm. the motive behind stopping the questioning on the Medical and Dental Council was because they couldn't allow the questions to begin on it, right? So they had to erroneously state that no changes had been made. Because once they admitted that changes had been made, then we got into a whole slew of things. But why was the changes made? Why was it necessary to remove the whole board? Mm-hmm. Because let's look at the current situation in this country right now. We have the Port Authority Board, and we know that the Chief Executive Officer is suspended. Nothing happened to the board. We have the HSA, with all their myriads of problems and mismanagement and quality of care issues and everything else. Nothing happens to the board. We have the Turtle Farm, with all of their myriads of problems of people being arrested and everything else. Nothing happened to the board. We have a document that will be tabled today by the Stock Exchange Board in its recruitment of its Chief Executive Officer, which certifies that they broke at least 5 sections of the Public Authority Law. And the document reveals that the board did not even appear before the people who were doing the investigation. Only one board member came to meet with the people doing the investigation. The chairman chose not to be interviewed. He done written submissions. Mm-hmm. Nothing has happened to the board. We have the Airport Authority, where we had the minister come out and say that everything was copacetic, it was on budget, it was on time. We've had the Chief Executive Officer come out since that and says, well, it's really not on budget. There's likely to be some overruns here, right? It is being alleged, and rumor has it, that there's all kinds of stuff going on with that contract. And the word on the street that we may be looking to a 35-40% overrun in the cost. Wow. Nothing is happening to the board. Compare all of that to the Medical and Dental Council and how they were running that board. Mm-hmm. That board was being run with the utmost professionalism. It was a strict adherence to the law, right? So much so that they had 2 appeals from that board to the appellate body. The appellate body upheld both decisions of the board. So it tells you that the board was operating correctly. Why was it necessary to change every member of the board? Was it because there was representation from a commercial interest, right? Because their commercial interest was not being considered when granting a professional license. Mm-hmm. There should be no consideration for commercial interest at that time. It's based on the qualifications of the person, mm-hmm. the experience of the person, mm-hmm. the character of the person being applied for registration, right? But we have a situation where the government removed the whole board, and there has been no explanation to the public for the reason why. And put in place a board, right, which the board's first meeting, they invited that commercial interest in to make their commercial argument in front of a professional body. Unheard of. Never happened before this professional body in the history of it that I'm aware of. So this is why this had to stop. This is why the government had to go along with the DG and refuse from things. Now let me explain something clearly. If a situation is where I was moving this thing as Ezra Miller, right? And I was raised in a matter of privilege. Procedure is quite simple and quite clear. Understanding Orders 28, I get up and I said, like, to raise a matter of privilege, the Speaker allows me to outline basically what the thing is, and he makes a decision then as to whether it's a matter of privilege or not. Mm-hmm. And if he says, yes, it is a matter of privilege, then any member, don't have to be the person who raised the original matter, can move a motion on privilege. In this situation, this was not being done by Ezra Miller, represented people on our side, or leader of the opposition. This was being done by the Public Accounts Committee. So, in my view, it had to be handled a little different. But the Standing Order 28, 1, 2, and 3 still pour in, right? So the Speaker is right in his decision that he had the right under Standing Order 28.3 to determine it was not a matter of privilege. But it was very interesting that he used the language used by the Deputy Governor in his letter to the thing, which I did not present before him in raising the matter of the thing, right? So they then decided it wasn't going forward. And what we have now done is that the Parliament has refused to expose this kind of stuff that is happening in a committee that it elects amongst itself, and giving the civil servants, along with the Deputy Governor, a carte blanche to come there and erroneously inform the Parliament, as long as they use a couple of caveats. I don't know, I had a piece of paper in front of me.
Okay.
Sad day for the country.
We have to take a commercial break. Folks, please stay tuned. For the record, we'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. I'm going to crave Mr. Miller's indulgence. I know he has more to say about the motion, and we had to interrupt him to go to a commercial break. We want to take this caller, and then maybe after the headline news at 9 o'clock, we can get back to that, Mr. Miller. Okay, caller, good morning. Welcome
Callers
to For the
are most
Record.
important people.
Yes.
Good morning, Rosie. How are you?
I'm fine. Morning. How are you?
Not too bad. Good morning, Mr. Miller.
Morning, sir. How are you?
All right, pretty good. OC, coming back to this thing that where a few months ago when I told you that the government had used my property for so many years. Okay, Mr. Miller gave me some advice about it,
Yes.
I went through all the rigmarole, I got everything, and over 6 months ago, well, not quite 6 months yet, and the lady that spoke to me is the foreign lady. I'm not going to call her the name. She said all they were waiting for then was an affirmation or some confirmation from someone up here in the BRAC saying that this took place. They brought in the surveyor to survey, to verify what I was saying was correct. The government surveyor came and he found out that when they restored the police station, that whoever dealt with the roof or the contractor or whatever, that the roof is actually hanging over in our place, in my place. Right? Okay, now, yesterday, I found another government vehicle parked there. So I went and I took some pictures, and I know it's over 6 months, close to 6 months now, this woman was waiting for some confirmation from someone from up here. Now, who that person is, I don't know. But she haven't got back to me. I just come on the air today to let you know, and the public know, the government know, that these people have used my property, and they still continue to use my property, and nobody look like they don't give two hurrahs whether I get compensated for it or not. My next step is the ombudsman, or whoever she will it be, that's my next step to go to. Because I think it's ridiculous. I understand up here, when they were doing the pavement up here, the government went and took some other property without having any regarded confirming or dealing with the person. The person ended up taking them not to court, but putting some claim in for something like $300,000 or $400,000. They paid that person.
Wow.
Within 2 months. It's close to $300,000 to $400,000 that they paid that person. And no disrespect to white people or whatever, but this is a white person and a foreigner at that, or supposed to be a foreigner with Cayman connections. I'm not sure how that details go, but that person has been paid. You understand? Now.
Caller, can I suggest something to you? And I'm going to let you continue. What you may want to do, because obviously what they are in seeking confirmation from someone up there that this property has been used by government, what you should do is you should go and I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not giving you legal advice, but a suggestion so that you can stack things, have things in your favor. Get some affidavits from people who know that the cars that the government has been using your property. The cars have been parked there. Get some affidavits, sworn affidavits from them, witnessed by a justice. No, but what I'm saying is the same thing that they're saying that they're seeking from some official up there. You get that from the private sector as well, so that you have, because they at the end of the day, the official there may come back and say, we have no evidence that it was ever used. So
on that one occasion.
Yeah, or that one occasion. So get some affidavits from people who know the contrary, that they have been using it, and have that, in your hand as your ace in the hole too.
But who is now? You really think you'll get yourself involved with that, OC?
Good point. That's the problem.
Exactly.
Someone who's retired.
Don't worry about it right anymore.
Someone who's retired that they can't take their pensions away from them.
Yeah, well, that could be a help too.
Yeah.
But don't bother up here, not going to mix up this stuff like that, man. These people is very, very close knitted. And when they come to the government,
you never know until you try, though. You ask a few people,
No, but they're not going to bark anything about the government. I can tell you that right now. They're not going to bark anything, because life is sweet up here for these people that is connected with the government, or the people that run in the government up here.
Yeah.
You understand? So I am trying to tell you that the government should be really ashamed of itself, really. And I mean, that goes to all the politicians too, including you, Mr. Miller. Because you know that what I'm trying to tell you, I'm not telling you no bull.
I know that.
I'm telling you something that took place.
But I support your claim.
From day one that the property was in my name. I went over there and...
But what you need to do, since obviously the setbacks don't mean anything up there, what you need to do is go cut some touch trees down, right? Well, they can't do that because they're protected now, but get some coconut trees that tall or reach the roof, right? And go and take them, push them up through the roof and damage the roof on that I know your property. Lean the coconut trees up on it. Because you're on your property.
No, but I know into that, Mr. Miller.
I know that, but I shouldn't make them kind of recommendations. But sometimes you got to take things in, you just don't try and break the law.
They'll accuse you of inciting violence against the roof.
Right on my house.
But a little bit, sometimes civic disobedience helps,
No, into that, but son.
Good, that's good. I'm glad to hear that.
Exactly, I know into that.
Yeah.
I just deal with it straight. If it had been anybody else with a little bit higher, little bit lighter color than me, it would have been taken care of.
Yeah.
And if it was a foreigner that I took over the place, and he had made or she had made a claim to it, it would have been paid before you could look up in the sky.
Caller, we're going to ask you to leave us there. We just want to encourage you to keep pushing. Sooner or later, you will get results. Just keep hammering away at it. Folks, we ask you to just hang in there. We're going to take a break for our headline news, and for the record, we'll be right back. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. As promised, we're going to go back to Mr. Miller to talk about the motion on Wednesday.
Yeah, I want to make it clear that I agree that the Speaker had the right to do what he did, and that was a hurdle that I know I had to cross, because the motion that he approved was the motion that I would have moved once I got across 28-3, and that he determined that there was a matter of privilege, right? But the problem, my concern is that in doing what we did, Parliament gave up its supremacy in terms of expecting people to respect Parliament. We gave up the authority that people now had that Parliament had through the elected members of the PAC to seek the truth, because we now certified these people to come there and erroneously state things, right? And my concern is for the future erosion of our democracy that is likely to engender. And I thought it would have been better, because basically what the Speaker ruled is that erroneously informing Parliament, i.e. a committee of Parliament, is not a privilege, is not an infringement on the privileges of Parliament. and the some of the information that he used to justify that ruling, I have serious concerns about and question about, because there's too much similarity in what was in the letter that was given to the by the deputy governor in justifying his again and again. He did not acknowledge. He acknowledged that the person erroneously informed Parliament, but then he proceeded to the strange decision of dismissing the case. Now, you can't admit that the person erroneously informed Parliament, but there's no question to answer for, because the person said, "I don't believe, I don't think, I don't have a piece of paper in front of me," right? Because people at that level in the civil servants have a duty and a constitutional responsibility to know. They're supposed to know.
And it isn't like this is the first time that person is appearing in front of a public accounts committee
No.
and don't know the procedures.
And 3 years in a row,
And being prepared for it, being prepared.
They didn't lie. They just erroneously informed the Parliament. Now, but here's what happening in our society, and particularly in the civil service. We have a huge slew of people at lower levels in the civil service that are being correctly, don't misunderstand me, that they shouldn't be allowed to get away with it, right? And dragged before the courts, some of them, because some people were allowed to pass an English test because it was required of the bartenders, or your gardener has, you bring in a gardener from a non-speaking country,
Non-English,
or a bartender,
non-English,
where English is not the first language. They have to do a written test and pass it 80% or higher, right? These people are being dragged before the court because they didn't get 80%, but they allowed them to work, right? Compare that to the fact that Cabinet itself approved quite a number of people to come in from Turkey for the man that they just gave status to in Delhi. They moved the language requirement and ability to do a test for them to bring in people to lay tiles. Couldn't speak a word English.
Okay.
But they got a work permit. We have a situation which is part of the reason that I believe the Medical and Dental Council was summarily dismissed in totality, is because they were saying these people need to demonstrate they can speak English. We have a situation where your gardener, my gardener, who pull in bush, have to do a written English test in order to get a permit. But we have people here who are going as doctors, who have people's lives in their hands, who don't have to do it. And the government is comfortable with it being a discretion of the Medical and Dental Council to say they have to pass a written test. Now, particularly in the Cayman Islands, where we don't have all of the electronic and machinery that can test and diagnose people, there is a huge reliance, right, on communication to get a symptomatic diagnosis of the problem. The patient has to be able to clearly articulate what their symptoms are. The doctor has to clearly understand what the symptoms are in order to aid in the diagnosis based on the results of the mechanical or electronic testing. And we are comfortable, and we will dismiss a board because the chairman is saying, I need to interview these people, right? Or I want the standard English test that is accepted internationally. I don't remember the acronym, TOEFL or something. You used to be in immigration, you might know about it. But there's a standard English test that people who are required moving to England from these same countries to practice medicine and stuff have to pass, right?
Okay.
And part of the commercial interest, which I believe was the root cause of the dismissal of the whole board, is because they have to do an English. I mean, just are you understanding what I'm trying to tell you, see? Is that we have people going before the court because they let somebody in who didn't get 80% on English test to be a bartender, right? But we don't require a similar written test by people who are coming here to practice medicine. So you see the reason now why they had to find a way to say that this chief officer didn't commit perjury. She just erroneously informed us that there was no changes to the medical council when she had to know. I have copies of the letter appointing the new board that would come out of her ministry. Not signed by her, but she has a responsibility to know that they were done properly. I know the dates that those letters were sent out. And it wasn't 4 or 5 years before, right?
And those instructions would have come, like you said before, from a cabinet paper, submitted to cabinet, approved by cabinet, the minutes of cabinet coming back from the cabinet secretary, going to the chief officer for the
action
right? to be taken.
And she had no problem clearly recalling, right, a motion that I had moved 4 years before. And what month I moved it in Parliament. No caveats were placed on that, right? And at some point in time, we have to continue, don't get me wrong, we have to continue holding, right, the lower echelons of the civil service to when they do wrong. But let me tell you something now. We got to start holding those at the top when they do wrong too, right? Because how can you be involved in signing off a $2 million expenditure, right, without seeing a contract, which it is alleged, right, and nothing happens, right? And all the Public Accounts Committee, and again, I need to emphasize to the people, this was not Ezra Miller doing this. I don't have a vote in the Public Accounts Committee either, right? I have a casting vote only. The government has three out of 4 members, the majority. At any time in this process, those 3 people could have stopped it. I tabled a report on the 16th of March, again, right, which the Speaker referred to, but he left off the sentence that said this motion was the ultimate action to be taken. And it's in that same report. They could have stopped it, right? They could have called a meeting of the committee, right, and used their majority position, right, to say we're satisfied. The PSC is now satisfied with the dismissal of the DG, and we don't wish to proceed to what we had reserved and further. They didn't do that. They simply refused to pass a motion that they directed me to do, and the public needs to understand that. Right? The 2 members who refused to sign it, which the Speaker relied very heavily on in dismissing that there was no perjury to be answered for, signed the report that was tabled on the 16th of March that directed this action to be done. It was me as chairman who, I believe now incorrectly, convinced the members to consider, but it was their decision, going the route of asking the deputy governor to discipline the person because of my fear of that exactly what happened on Wednesday was what happened. And the government would have seen it as an opportunity to embarrass Ezra Miller, right? Forget the consequences of what we're doing or the importance of it, but this is an opportunity to take Ezra Miller down a peg or 2.
That English test that you were talking about is SCT, some EF
something like that, yeah.
EF test. Okay, we have a caller. Let's go to the phone lines. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning to you, Mr. O.C. Good morning to Honorable Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Miller.
Good morning,
Good morning,
sir.
sir.
I'd just like to ask 2 questions, and I'll hang up.
Sure.
And listen for your answers. First, the deputy governor sits in the House when you're having your the meetings and having the debates, right? So he's part of the House, per se.
Yes, but he can't vote and he can't make up quorum.
I understand all that. I know that. The question is this: with no governor being here, and if you debate a bill, because I've been asked this question by people that I've in my job that they're interested in foreigners, but they'll come here, and many of them are lawyers and state commissioners and so forth, and mayors and so forth. What happens when a bill is debated, passed in Parliament? There's no governor here right now.
Oh, there's never a situation when we don't have a governor. We have a governor.
Yeah, okay.
The governor right now is His Excellency Franz Manderson. He is the governor. The fact that we deliberately lower our own people by calling him acting governor, I don't use them terms. He is His Excellency the governor at this present time.
Fine. Okay, let me rephrase that then.
Right.
That's the governor. When that bill is been debated and passed in the House, we know that the governor, His Excellency the governor, has to give his assent to it.
Right.
Or he can send it back to be debated again, or add something to it, or do something in a serious thing. Does this Deputy Governor, His Excellency the Honorable Franz Madison, have the authority to do that? That was the question posed to me.
If
does it have to be sent to the foreign office?
If he is the governor, he has the authority during the period that he is the governor to refuse to assent to a bill from the Legislative Assembly. But there's
There's a procedure.
That is not an arbitrary decision.
Right.
You know, that is a very deliberate process that has to be followed before that happens.
Exactly.
It would have to go to the Foreign Office, in other words.
Yes. Foreign and Commonwealth Office. His boss over there has to give the okay.
Yeah.
Yes. There's no. Just as when the British governor is here, who has been sent by the Great Britain's government, Her Majesty's government.
Yes.
So it will be almost exactly the same situation then.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Because I wasn't sure. I'm telling you the truth. And I don't know how many Caymanians are sure of that, or like myself, uneducated people, and so it's all the same until the new governor arrives, and then the other question is this, because often, as I heard my friend Mr. Stanley Hill call here a while ago, I'm often asked about this by many young Caymanians and many older ones too, that are earning minimum wage, and you can earn below that when you're doing tourism work, as we all know.
Yeah.
That they'd like to do repairs. I'm talking about Caymanians. I'm not talking about foreigners. I do the same because it concerns me if it's Caymanians. That the banks do not accept their gratuity as part and parcel of their salary.
Not in terms of...
It's very in terms of trying to get a loan.
Right, calculating the 8 or 20%, yeah.
Yeah, and we know the cost of land. The time when Mr. Hill was talking about, we know what it was. $2 an hour could easily get you a bank loan approved, because land was then $4,000 to $5,000 a lot. The same land is now $70,000, and there's no way it can...
I can remember when a lot in Governor's Sound was $5,000 US.
Yes, yes.
It's $1 million if you can find one.
3 lots for $1,200 each.
Mm-hmm.
They're now $68,000 a lot. It was 1971. Which is a tremendous higher ratio to what you're earning now and to then. Look at it. So I just wonder if there's any move afoot to change that the banks would tend to allow it, because it would give the person some foothold into getting a loan that way. I just wondered if there's any movement.
Not that I'm aware of, but equally so, the bank does not like to take into consideration rental income, even though you may have apartments that you own that are free from any mortgage or commitments or any impediments, but they will not normally accept the full amount of rent that you get in order to be able to get a loan, a bigger loan.
Mm-hmm. Caller, we're going to ask you to leave us there. We have to take a commercial break. We'll have about 10 minutes left of the show when we return. Please stay tuned for the record. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. We have about 10 minutes left in the show. In the studio with me this morning, Honorable D. Ezra Miller, Leader of the Opposition. We're going to close the phone lines off now to give you an opportunity to some wind-up comments, and I want to try to do a little quick research here to expand on the last caller's question in relation to the governor's ability to disallow legislation as well.
Yeah, that's very specific.
Yes.
But what I want to say is that I want to challenge the minister, the Honorable Dwayne Seymour, to tell the public, since we didn't get a chance to dig up into the Public Accounts Committee, we didn't get a chance to discuss it on the motion and debate it, to tell the people what was the reason that he needed to summarily dismiss the complete medical and dental council and appoint a complete new council. I think the country needs to know what was the reason for that, right? And so I want to issue a challenge, public challenge on him today, to explain to the public, to come on your show, right, on Monday, and explain to
Monday's
the public.
Monday's a holiday, but if they want, I would accommodate them on Monday.
Right. Or he'll come on Wednesday, and he can bring the chief officer with him if he wants. I really, and tell the public what was the reason that it was so urgent, it was so necessary to summarily remove a functioning medical and dental council who, by all intents and purpose, by all public record, was doing a fantastic job. As I said earlier, I am aware of 2 appeals that went to the appeals, and both were upheld by the board.
Do we know when the appointment of each of those members when they actually ended or would have ended had they not been dismissed? No, I don't have that.
Because
that would be interesting to know that as well. You wouldn't want them. Remember, they could come back and say, "Well, their term had expired. We allowed them to continue, despite the fact that their term had expired, and then we decided to change all of them." Then, not putting words in their mouth,
but that would be illegal.
Yeah,
but if your appointment expired and you're not reappointed, you can't make any decision on the board.
Yeah. Well, right? There are ways and means of going back and making those decisions legal as well. I've seen that happen before.
Oh, well, yeah. I call it the dance of legislation, right? But I think it is important for the country to know, right, why so soon after an election it was necessary to remove what appeared, by all intents and purposes, to be a perfectly functioning board, right? But no minister has seen fit to remove any of the board members from those dysfunctional boards that are operating the port, the airport, the HSA, the stock exchange, and the turtle farm, right? I think the public deserves it. But just to get to the north side issues before I need, there's just to inform the parents and stuff that there's a number of summer Bible schools that are going to be taking place at the Civic Center. One is being sponsored by my office. The Pilgrim Holiness Church is doing one, and the United Church is doing one, and the Church of God in Frankstown is working with my office to do one. So we hope to have some things for kids to do over the summer. And I also know that there's a couple of football camps and stuff that usually occurs, and I'm sure I'll get a call from Mr. Kennedy pretty soon now, talking about the one that they do, because that's a very thing. That's something that is looked forward to every year in the community. And I also want to take the opportunity to publicly congratulate all the students, teachers, and parents from the Aiden Mile Primary School who were the kids who got awards, and their awards ceremony on Monday. It does your heart real good, right? When you see these little reception children, coming up and getting an award for arts and science, and when you see children who get awards because they've improved so well during that school year, and they get award, it's a wonderful experience for the children. I put up a small prize of $100 each for the child that read the most books in different categories.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And it was, and it was huge. I think it was probably more than 30 odd of the students who actually took part in the competition. And when you get that kind of interest in reading, it bodes good for the future for students and stuff, right? So I want to publicly congratulate the teachers and the parents, because the ones who won, right, actually was two brothers that won, two from the same family, because their parents worked so good with the school and because there was requirements to be monitored and reports and all that sorts of stuff, right? and activities. So it is good to, and I want to publicly thank the teachers of the school for making the North Side, the 8 Mile Primary School, such a wonderful school, and also to encourage the parents who've been very active, and use this as an example to ask all of the other parents who are not quite as active to start getting involved with the school. And hopefully next year, my dream for Northside is to get an alumni association of myself and Donnie and Lane and all them people who went through that school a long time ago to come in and start supporting the school financially, because
that's a big thing in many other jurisdictions, especially in the U.S. Yes.
The alumni that
universities and everything,
through donations and involvement in the school. Yes. Because this is why I'm always advocating that I want to see more devolution of authority to the principals from managing the schools, and I want to see them under a community-driven board, so that we get the community involved in the school.
We almost had a commitment by the previous Minister for Education that would happen to a certain extent. Where is that now? Where is it?
It seems to be turned on its head, because what seems to be happening, although there's very little happening, is that there seems to be a foot to reel more authority into the Education Council. Now, by amendments that I filed to the education law that was passed, the provision is there, not as broad and not as open and not as straightforward as I would have liked to have seen it. But the opportunity is there to devolve authority to the schools and have these community boards. Because you can remember when I went to school in Northside, I couldn't hide anything from my parents, because the teacher lived in the community. They met my parents at the little grocery store. They met my parents at church. They met my parents at all that. Well, we have a situation now, and this is no fault of the teachers. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not blaming the teachers for this. But most of the teachers don't live in that community anymore. So they come in, they get in, they do their school time, and they go back to their communities where they're involved in, And this is one of the things that the compensation has for teachers are sort of whack. Because those days the pay was small, but they got other things from the community.
Yes.
They got recognition, they got appreciation, they got support, right? They're not getting one of those things now,
They might have even gotten a spouse out of there.
Exactly. And then you could do what my grandparents used to talk about prog. I'm sure you heard your people talk about when the minister come into he come and do a little prog in. So get that, Sarah, get that basket that a couple of yams and a piece of cassava, 2 bottles that I put aside for him. Give it to him. The lack of a salary was made up by other things, and a lot of it was respect and appreciation that the community showed to the teachers, and the opportunity to show that now is small, right? And so therefore we need to make it up by increasing the compensation.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Mr. Miller, I want to thank you.
So thank you for having me. And let me get down to
not finished yet, though. I want you to sit right there just in case you may have any comments on this. Section 78 of our Cayman Islands Constitution Order 2009, assent to bills. And it says a bill shall not become law until, and this is an answer to the question that the last caller raised. A bill shall not become a law until A, the governor has assented to it in Her Majesty's name and on Her Majesty's behalf, and has signed it in token of his or her assent, or Her Majesty has given her assent to it through a Secretary of State, and the governor has signified her assent by proclamation. Goes on to say, when a bill is presented to the governor for his or her assent, he or she shall, subject to this Constitution and to any instruction addressed to him or her by her magistrate through a Secretary of State. And that is a very important phrase there. And any instructions addressed to him or her by her majesty through a Secretary of State. And we don't know what those instructions are.
Don't remember we used to have those. When I was in cabinet a long time ago, you're a former Cabinet Secretary. Do we still have royal instructions? You remember there was a whole document of royal instructions that dealt with those kind of things, how that had to be activated by the administrator, the governor at the time, in order to enact the input from the Secretary of State and permission.
I've never seen it. But again, this would, for instance, the the whole issue of the beneficiary ownership and stuff like that. This is where a lot of this would kick in now in terms of instructions again coming from because the legislation would be passed in the UK. But how do you bring it into effect in the Cayman Islands? Would be
the constitutional
probably
process would be is that they would pass it and they would instruct and what they intend to do, which is not the normal way it has been done before. It was always an executive decision, which was handled through the Privy Council.
Yeah.
The Privy Council will send down the order, right, to the governor here, and we will be asked as legislators to pass it. And if we say we're not passing it, he can actually pass it. And the government administration will then.
Yes. So it says. Then, through a Secretary of State, declare that he or she assents or refuses to assent to it, or that he or she reserves the bill for the signification of Her Majesty's pleasure. But unless he or she has been authorized by a Secretary of State to assent to it, the governor shall reserve for the signification of Her Majesty's pleasure any bill which appears to him or her acting in his discretion to be in any way repugnant. So it goes on to tell you how you can the governor can. So it is quite obvious that the governor, acting in his own personal capacity, can decide
that I'm not going to send it, but then he has to justify that lack of assent to the Secretary of State and get their authorization to announce to the elected government that he's not assenting to the bill.
To the bill. And chances are, if he's assenting to it, those instructions will tell him what to do. Yeah. But we need to tell people that, every week, those cabinet papers that go to cabinet and all other documentation are sent off to the UK. They know everything that is happening down here. The governor here is only their handyman. He is their handyman.
He's there to represent. The governor is here to represent their interests, not our interest to them.
He's a figurehead.
That's why that might believe that's why they recall this one, because he was tending to represent our interests.
Yes.
But he's also, in addition to that, now we have the modern day legislation usually now carries a clause too that says even after the governor assents it, it used to be that once he has signed what we used to call the vellum copy, you remember that?
Yes.
It was law at that time. Most of the modern legislation, that's not so, carries a clause too that says this law will be brought in by order and council. That's why we don't have the standards in public life law brought in yet, although it was passed some 4 years ago. Because although the governor has assented to it, right, the clause that the cabinet reserves to appoint the date that it comes into effect has not yet been done. So therefore, the law is not in effect.
Yeah. So and those who have an interest in it, like I said, Section 78 of the Constitution, and then we have Section 79, returns of bills by the governor, Section 80, disallowance of laws as well, and 81, governor's reserve powers as well. So there's a lot there that we're unable to go into at this point in time.
The Premier made yesterday, he's talking about that section there, the power of the governor to disallow bills, and also Section 125 for the people to be able to write legislation over for us.
And we didn't get an opportunity to even talk about the headline in the Compass, and I think some people refer to it as the compost. Mr. Miller?
Yeah.
Cayman seeks to reduce governor's power. Of course, that headline could have read, Cayman politicians seeking to
improve local control over internal matters
and the right to determine our own destiny.
But listen to me. If the Compass, I am beginning to believe that if the Compass ever wrote anything positive about the government or the politicians or Cayman, they would be like that tape. Remember that Mission Impossible? This tape is about to explode. If they wrote anything positive about the government, they believe that building will explode.
Okay. Folks, I want to thank you for allowing Radio Cayman and by extension For the Record into your homes, into your vehicles as you traverse the busy roads of the Cayman Islands into your places of work, whether it be an office cubicle or if you're working in the outdoors. I also want to remind you that we are brothers and our sisters keepers. There is always someone out there who's less fortunate than we are, and I ask you to extend a helping hand to them. If you can't do that, then I suggest you donate to a worthy charity, because we always want to consider those who need, not necessarily those who want, or even those who crave. I say to you, have a great day. Continue to support your radio station. Join me at 12 noon for Talk Today, when I will be guest hosting for Sterling Dwayne Ebanks. And I want to say to that writer who sent a question about deferred applications for permanent residence that I didn't get an opportunity to address that during the course of this show, but I will address it. If not on Sterling's show, then when we return on Wednesday, hopefully, because Monday, of course, is a holiday, so For the Record will not be on Monday. So I say to you, have a great day, and as usual, we ask the good Lord to bless these three beautiful, wonderful Cayman Islands.
For the Record is brought to you by Fidelity Bank. For all your banking and pension needs, call or visit a
Coming to you live from Radio Cayman Studio.
For the record.
For the record. Hear from your government officials, independents, and the opposition on issues that matter to you. The record. Engage in an open dialogue between residents and lawmakers.
For the record.
The record. Informative, impartial, insightful.
This is your talk show.
1-800-534-8255. Your calls, your input. This is For the Record.